No, thank you, Walton. I found that enlightening in many ways, especially coming from a teacher who also loves using different drama activities to teach students. And you mentioned something I profoundly agree with, that drama can feel safe, really safe for students. Is that something you've always found? Have you ever had any challenges, any difficulties implementing drama uh, tasks in a classroom setting?
Yeah, I mean, I think students can be stage fright, and they often think that drama means they're going to be standing on a big stage and everyone's going to be watching them and judging them. But I think once you show that it's fun, and you can they can sort of loosen up. In a lot of ways, my favorite way to do that is to model the activities.
Uh,
And I'll make a fool of myself, and I'll be up there, saying like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I ate the last piece of pizza in the box." Um, and then something breaks through, and then we've created this environment where, yeah, okay, we're going to make fools of ourselves, but we're going to be practicing, um, and we're going
I
to be
don't,
playing with language. That's my favorite new pun, is that plays are playing with language.
I don't think I could use drama in a classroom in any other way if I wasn't prepared to make a bit of a fool of myself, to be a little bit silly.
Yeah.
Um, um, I think we had a comment earlier from Alice. She mentioned um, a game called Peas and Carrots. Is that something that you've used before, or if not, are there any other warm up activities that have worked for you in a classroom setting?
Yeah, I've actually used, I called it apple pie and ice cream. But yeah, I've done something similar where you predict the intonation based on a nonsense phrase. Another great warm activity, well, the one that I talked about in the video, so saying a meaningful line with different intonations. But then talking about what's the difference between saying a line sarcastically or sincerely or cheerfully.
Uh-huh.
Um, And one variation that I'll do on find someone who, it's a classic um, warm up or get to know you activity. So find someone whose birthday is in December. Find someone who loves peas and carrots. And then I'll do, so you find someone who, greet them as. So you once you find that person, then you have to talk to them as if you are their long lost relative, or as if you are their boss and they've just done a terrible mistake, or as if you're, a child on the playground.
Uh-huh.
Um, so then you get different things like, "Oh, your birthday's in November. My birthday's in October." You know. Oh, it's your. Oh, I remember. In the old country, we used to eat peas and carrots. I have not eaten mommy's peas and carrots in so long. Um, and that kind of gets that idea that in different situations we act different ways, and with different contexts we talk to people differently.
Absolutely. I think sometimes I ask students to read out something as if it's a war speech or or something like that. Just yeah, because you mentioned those different situations with as if. Um, it's is it something? Yeah, is it something that's taught enough in everyday textbook materials? Intonation. Do you think is it something that teachers can generally uh, teach more of in class?
Yeah, I think it's something that it's mentioned in textbook materials, but I think when pronunciation and syllable and word level pronunciation tend to get more attention. Which, I mean, I understand students want to sound like a native speaker, but what does that mean? I'm a native speaker. You're a native speaker. Australians are native speakers. There are people in India who are native speakers. So I think that focusing on intonation is a better way of sounding like a fluent, proficient speaker of English. And I think sometimes it's taught in the textbook materials. It's taught almost like mathematics. When you ask a question, your voice goes up like this.
Yeah,
Um, when but I think there needs to be a little more teaching how it can be manipulated. Um, and how we use intonation to signal. Sometimes we put on an angry intonation, but we're not really angry. But we just want to kind of intimidate the other person, or we um, I think teachers often deal with these questions in class, but it's done in sort of an ad hoc manner as it comes up. Um,
Yeah.
I watched a movie yesterday and I heard the actor said this in this way. Why did he do that? But I think it'd be nice if it was more sort of systematic.
No, definitely. Because I think, gosh, intonation. Um, I think it's, I may be wrong on this, but it's like C1 level where things like sarcasm, like
Oh,
sarcastic intonation, things like this start, being taught. Whereas if you live in the UK, for example, then gosh, you encounter sarcasm, passive aggression, they're relentlessly, don't you? So it's an enormously important aspect of language learning, isn't it? But um, do you sometimes use source materials from uh, TV shows, sitcoms, things like this? And if so, do you have any particular favorite TV series which you'd go to for examples of script writing?
yeah, definitely. TV and movies are great, and a lot of times, they can be a little bit artificial. I like to use sitcoms and comedies because students like comedies; they like to laugh, um, and so they can be a little bit kind of artificial. But a lot of times, a TV sitcom, the humor derives from a breakdown in pragmatics or a breakdown in communication, right? I don't know. I've watched a few UK comedies, and some of the tropes are the same, and some are different. But like in the US, you know, you, you'll always have an episode about someone makes two plans at the same time. So they're supposed to be at English club, but they're also supposed to go on a date with the cute girl. And just for some reason, they never tell anybody and they try to pull it off. Well, that's kind of the kind of ridiculous communication situation that in real life would never happen. You would say, if the beautiful girl or the beautiful boy asks you out on a date, you say, "Oh, sorry, I have English club. Um, you know, would you like to come along? Or how about Saturday?" And comedy does not ensue. So it's interesting to talk about, to practice the lines from the TV play, and then to talk about it at that level of like, okay, so what was the pragmatics mistake here? What was the misunderstanding, and how would we do that in real life in a more sort of realistic setting?
I think with humor or anything like that, there is a real it's quite high risk, isn't it, in terms of almost over analyzing something and almost demotivating students in some ways. I think from experience, there's that potential danger, isn't there? But attendees, let's see what questions we have. If we have a look at chat.
Gabi has a question asking you, Walton, whether you have ever had any students who just didn't bite and refused to fully engage in a drama activity. And what can be done in a situation like this, because some of us might have experienced this.
Sure. I haven't, and I don't know. Alice does a lot with drama as well, so she may be able to chime in. Um, I know I'm discussing lots of situations that are over the top, but the plays don't always have to be. I think if we think of plays as always being crazy and wild, or Shakespeare. Shakespeare is very good for pragmatics, but not so much for authentic language, modern language. But a play can be a role play. So it can be a fairly realistic situation. I think the apology script that I shared is a fairly real situation. So I try to kind of de-emphasize. It's not that we're doing a play and there's going to be a spotlight on you. It's that we're practicing this set of useful skills of pragmatics, of prosody. You need to be able to understand when someone is being sarcastic, insincere. I know a lot of students come to America and they don't understand what's called the American friendly. We have this very perfunctory friendliness, And in other cultures, you wouldn't be as friendly and smile with strangers. So they take it, so how do you recognize that? Like, oh, have a nice day. Thanks for shopping at Walmart. Versus like, oh, hey, how you doing? I hope you have a great day. Um, so just teaching them that it's a set of useful skills, and it's practice, and we're all in it together, and it's not acting, it's language work. I don't know, Chris, if you've had problems with role plays, with students refusing to do role plays.
I've had many times in which I've had to really sell it to students, especially probably more so with adults. When I've taught at companies, for example, when you've got, because when you mentioned yourself in your presentation, relationship building. So if you teach adults, if you teach a company, if you teach colleagues, for example, then it's hard for them to kind of to forget the fact that they're the other person's boss, for example. So there is because I think, especially with adults, if you're teaching at companies, if there's an existing hierarchy in place, then it's quite a challenge at times for professional people to almost lose that, even for half an hour, for an hour, and to be someone else. Whereas probably from experience, I'd probably say that younger learners probably a little bit more flexible with it.
Yeah. One thing that I did teach in an oil company in Kazakhstan, and what we did, it wasn't drama per se, but they went to a lot of international conferences. They had a lot of phone calls and meetings with international partners. And so we would do, fairly realistic role plays of those kinds of situations. And we did one activity they kind of enjoyed because it allowed them to kind of show off. So I would be just the hard-nosed negotiator. So they would be, we want to, make this business deal. We want to get access to your, land or whatever. And I would no, and anything they threw at me, I would just find a reason to say no to, I'm not, and so that was kind of fun, but it was also realistic, and it helped them sort of get into it. And they probably, deal with those situations all the time.
Absolutely, because I think with drama, with role play, it is connected, isn't it, to things like negotiating. You mentioned there actually no, like the intonation of no. I was lucky enough to go to the Globe to attend a workshop at the Globe with a group of students a few years ago. And there was a game where the students were put into pairs, and they had to say yes and no using different intonations, and they had to mirror each other's intonations, and they had to supplement this with body language. And brilliant! It was absolutely fantastic. So it was like no, yeah, yes, no, and it would go back and forth like this, and I think what that game really sort of demonstrated to me was just the sheer number of different types of intonation and what the impact that does have on meaning, with writing scripts. This is to our attendees as well. Would you have any advice for writing dialogues for student materials? Are there any do's, any don'ts for teachers to help them with writing dialogues to use in the classroom?
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from attendees, and I know Alice does more writing than I do. For me, I try to, I actually just started with a job I had writing listening tests, and the requirement of the job was you had to have a source. You had to have an authentic speaking source. And it was at the time, I hated it. I mean, I was going through YouTube and podcasts and looking for, you had to, but now I think it was great because it made the dialogues very, very authentic. So I think, just watching YouTube videos, podcasts, whatever you can find of people in that context or using that language function, and just really trying to pick up on, what's the language they use, what's the intonation, um, what's the ritual, what's the script, how does an apology in a boardroom of a Fortune 500 company go, or how does a persuading a small child to go to the doctor go, as much as you can use authentic material.
Oh, absolutely.
Can we ask Alice as well? I'm interested in it because she has a comment in the chat room saying that she works on the script for a while, but then invites her students to adapt, the script and, to reflect what they think their character might say or change. So I'm interested in what she has to say about that, how she does that. Alice, could you come on? Oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, yes, I'm lucky enough to be able to teach an English through drama class. So I have students who agree to do drama before they sign up for the course. But I've also done drama with a regular class. But when I teach the English through drama class, we work with a script for a while. The cold read hardly has any intonation at all. But as we practice and rehearse, they start making choices, and we work a lot with stress patterns and trying to create thought groups so that they know what words to stress and what words to reduce. And we do things with linking, but a lot of that is decided by how the character feels. So we do a lot of pronunciation work with the students, bringing in the personality that they want their character to have. And so it's looking at that layer of the script that sometimes they just really struggle with a word like, hypothermia. I don't know, it just came into my head. That's a very long word with a lot of different syllables. So we might say something else like too cold. We might just adjust it. So they'll have a conversation with me about it, or with the other people that they're acting with, about that scene. When they have conversations about their scene, they could cut lines if they don't feel the lines are necessary. And as long as the other actors are familiar with what they're doing and know what to expect and can still get their cue, it works really well. The last point about that is, what I really like about them working on a script in groups is that there's a lot of English about the process. So they're using English authentically to talk about how they're going to stage the play, character motivations, and things like that. So all of that conversation about what they want to do with the script and how they want to read it and all of that goes with the authentic piece about doing a production together. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, is it YOUSUF? Have you got a question? Do you have a question as well?
Hi.
Hi, good afternoon. Oh,
Hi. Yeah, I've got several questions. One of them are, how do we deal with, in particular, introverts? My Wi-Fi stopped for a second, so I missed some. May have missed some responses. Obviously, does Walton agree kind of favors extroverts, or can they be drawn out? And I guess not every teacher is like Walton as well. Obviously, is very comfortable at doing this. And also, for some more for Alice, what are sort of the boundaries using sort of authentic language and, if you like, taboo language, which obviously is very common in spoken language, but does that have a place in the classroom?
I can talk about, so for introverts, again, I think, if your class is shy and introverted, it doesn't, again, have to be, or you're as a teacher, you're introverted, it doesn't have to be a big production. It doesn't have to be, we're doing, you can just keep it at the more authentic level. I think the logic of hamming it up and going a little crazy is it makes it engaging and motivating. And sometimes it helps to, I mean, if you want to learn how to sound a certain way, it helps to kind of ham it up and exaggerate and then kind of bring it back. But you don't have to. I mean, this is useful for even just very perfunctory, boring interactions like customer service. How do you talk to someone in a store? If you're an introvert, how do you kind of fake that little insincere friendliness that is sort of expected in some places? Like, oh, have a nice day. Oh, thank you. And in terms of like taboo language and authentic language, I think it depends on the context and who you're teaching. If you're teaching professors who are going to be scholars, visiting fellows or visiting scholars at Harvard or Oxford University, taboo language maybe is not as important. But if you're teaching teenagers or high school kids who are going to be studying abroad with other high school kids and teenagers, that colloquial taboo language might be part of the set of language they need to, if not employ, at least understand. Understand that if someone uses a bad word, if a teenager uses this is effing dumb. That doesn't sound as harsh as it might sound in your language. Like I know in Russian, there's a set of bad words that, are very, very bad words that you wouldn't just hear people throw off. And in America, you do hear people throw off these bad words, even though in other situations, they are quite bad. You wouldn't say it at work, Hey, give me the effing thing.
That's so true, isn't it? In relation to pragmatics, just the gravity of certain words. Like I'm joining you all from Italy, and I often use mi dispiace, like sorry in England. And in England, obviously, sorry is uttered constantly. And in Italy, they mi dispiace when you're really sorry. You've done something really bad. YOUSUF, interesting question there about technology. Do you think using technology, recording students' performance and playing the recording in class would help? Yeah, great question. What do you think, Walton?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. If the students can stand to watch themselves and listen to themselves, that's great. And that is actually a good solution. If you have a student who's very shy and introverted, maybe they can do it at home and they can record themselves and just perform for themselves and maybe share the recording with you, and just play it back. I mean, as a teacher, I've had mentors suggest that I record myself and watch my body and my tone and my mannerisms. So I think for students, yeah, it's a great way to practice, by recording and then looking at how they, because how you sound isn't always how you think you sound, and how you look isn't always how you think you look.
That's yeah, for sure. That's a great question. Great question, YOUSUF.
And in our interactive world, that may be what group work looks like these days. For some of us.
Maria has a question in the Q&A. Can you see that, Chris? Maria,
yeah.
Maria, would you like to voice your question?
Yeah, I think, yes. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yeah.
I am really enjoying this activity, this workshop, because I love drama, and I tend to use drama a lot with my younger ones and with the younger teenagers, because they do seem to enjoy it much more. What I was my question was, I mean, do you think that if you introduce, say, drama perhaps once a week, would that distract the students from the formalities of the language, or the students will think that, oh, just, learning English is just drama and having fun all the time, well, it's not my case, you know. I mean, but I do. I mean, I have observed that they do love drama, doing little presentations, doing little kind of just dialogues, or, for example, giving them the responsibility of running, like, let's say, the news. You know, they love that.
Yeah, I don't think it distracts. I think it supplements grammar or I know what you mean by formalities, but if you you know, I think it supplements it by giving them authentic, useful speaking skills. And you know, and it's drama is fun, but it always, and presentations are fun, but it can always come back to something useful and practical in the real world. You know, okay, we're doing a drama, and in this drama, you know, the teacher made a mistake, and the student stands up for themselves, and the teacher punishes that student. Well, that's a pretty real situation that happens to kids. An authority figure makes a mistake and then won't accept it. So how do you deal with that situation, which is obviously going to be very different for different people in different situations. And I think, you know, drama is, I hope I've made a case that, you know, if you can learn the formal rules of grammar, and the present perfect is formed in this way and it's used for it. Events that happened in the past but have some implication on the future. But, you know, this is sort of grammar and vocabulary in use. Drama is letting them apply that. You know, and then how do we take that grammar and then, you know, use it? So I think both are important.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I think, is this your question as well, Maria, about accent being really important? Yes, accent, is that using drama activities, is there an opportunity for students to try pronouncing things and using different accents? Is there a struggle in achieving that in a classroom, do you think?
Well, there is. If you're asking me the question, yeah. There is always. I do find that sometimes with their enthusiasm to participate, to be part of something, of an activity in which they are going to have a certain amount of control, makes them forget what they've learned. Whether it's you've just somebody here has experienced the same thing, you know, with groups of students. What I do, though, is with the permission, is just I record their presentations, or, like, for example, an activity we did was just they had to they had to prepare the news, and then there would be somebody who would be in charge of the weather forecast, somebody would be in charge of the sport news, somebody would be in charge of social events. And of course I would record that, and then they will see that, and then they will point at the mistakes they had made, and, you know, that was like a recap on what we had done. And then they will check the mistakes, they will comment on the other groups' mistakes, and that was quite I mean, it's a very I find fulfilling for the students, and enjoyable, and it breaks down sometimes with the monotony of the grammar lessons, exercises.
I guess with something being recorded, I guess that really sort of raises the stakes, doesn't it, in an activity? Oh my gosh, I'm going to be on camera. I can imagine, you know, having an Italian lesson if someone told me we're going to film a presentation. Like, whew, do you think that there'll be a danger? There is a danger of that being a bit daunting, perhaps, for students.
I would say that I have very cheeky students. I love them because I don't know why. I mean, they all seem to have lots of enthusiasm, and I suppose because if there are things that they don't normally do, when you come out with something completely different, they are very curious and they do want to be part of what's going on. But I'm talking about younger ones, 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Beyond that, I think they prefer other activities, more kind of like clever sort of discussions or different types of activities. And yeah, drama is relegated to another to another level.
Yeah, I think when I'm doing a drama activity, I tend to focus any error correction during the activity. It's more on the pragmatics and the prosody and the intonation. So it might be, okay, I think your character is supposed to be angry, but you didn't really sound angry. What does angry sound like? It sounds more like this. And a lot of times, there's interesting things like we think angry people yell or scream or talk fast, but actually when we're very angry, we talk very slowly, we intonate very carefully. It's kind of the opposite, at least in the US. It's the opposite. So a lot of stuff like that comes out and students start picking up on that. So they start correcting each other's, intonation. But then afterwards, the next day I might say, okay, so yesterday, guys, we did the awesome drama activity. It was a lot of fun. Good job. Now I heard a lot of people saying, I am will go. And remember that. So let's just do a quick reminder of the future tense. We'll do a little grammar activity. So again, then it's more kind of anonymous error correction too. It's not you said a mistake. It's more broad error correction, which is a little less embarrassing, I think.
So with drama activities per se, they do lend themselves really nicely to delayed error correction, don't they? It's, I think that's such an important thing to embrace from doing drama activities is, allow students to have complete ownership over the activity, to let them run with it, but not, to interrupt, their fluency, especially in anything that's fluency centered. You mentioned something there, Walton, and Maria as well, about emotion. Like when you're a language learner, when you're learning the vocabulary, learning grammar, it's rare, I guess, when you get to be angry in a language, excited in a language. Would you agree? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's why we talk about sometimes learners having a robo voice, or we don't get to know our students and their personalities. Yeah, because you're thinking about. I'm totally sympathetic to this when I say robo voice, and because you're thinking about, am I using the right word? Am I using the right grammar? Because that stuff is important. Am I pronouncing it intelligibly? Does this make sense? Did I understand what they're saying? Oh boy, their face looks bored. Did I say the right thing? Maybe I totally misunderstood. So it is kind of another level of expression, but I think it really, students have those emotions inside them. If we can let them express it, I think it helps bring out their personality a lot more. And I've worked in students in private language schools where students will go from beginner to advanced, and they'll be at the school for several months or even a couple of years, and you do feel like, oh, now that they're advanced, they can communicate more nuanced, subtle ideas, and I'm getting to know them better. But I think this is something, intonation and emotion is something that doesn't take, they can pick up on early, because they're doing it in their native language. We're all emoting and using pragmatics. We're doing all of this in our native countries. Anyway, so I think it can actually help bring it out. Oh wow, he's angry. Yeah, he is frustrated. I hadn't realized that that that's how he's feeling. So I think it's a great thing a great tool for students to have. Because even if they say like no, I want beans. Okay, the grammar is terrible, but okay, I got the message. Oh, you're frustrated. I'm giving you the wrong thing. I'm sorry, sir. Or like, oh, soccer, best sport. Oh yes, soccer day. Woohoo! Not to be. I can do my Russian. Everyone can make fun of my Russian accent if it'll balance things out.
So with and with some like chunks of language, and like going back to pragmatics, there's some set phrases that you would never say in a different way. For example, you'll never guess what. You know, you would always say that with a bit of excitement, wouldn't you? You'll never guess what. You'll never guess what. So it's attaching that, isn't it? The emotion, how you would normally say something. And you know, with something like, if you unload that, unpack that, you'll never guess what. You know, this sort of, you know, rhetorical question used to introduce something exciting. If you heard that as a language learner for the first time, you know, that's could be quite confusing. So to sort of to, I guess, to attach the emotion to the phrase.
Yeah, coming up with idioms like that, definitely.
Yeah, it's yeah, for sure.
We need to talk. We need to talk
Oh.
is never a good thing, and it's always said, you know, we need to talk.
Yeah. Fear of God when you ever hear that.
So yeah, I think it helps students to pick up on those idioms and when they are used in very particular ways.
Yeah. Can I have a word? Can I have a word? That's another thing that is we need to talk. Never guess what. So it's yeah, emotion. With emotion, with asking students to say something in a certain way, I guess you have to sort of pre-teach. Yeah, you have to pre-teach. You know, words like excited. You know, words like you know, reluctant, nervous. I guess 21st century emojis. You know, fantastic tool, aren't they, for you know, for teaching emotions, for having that prompt. Is that something you use with pre-teaching emotions and in prompting students to say something in a certain way? Is that something that you've used before, Walton? Emojis, for example?
No, but it's a good idea. I will from now on. I mean, I definitely find that I do a lot of modeling, but not, you know, and I try to level the language. So you know, if I was doing younger learners or beginners, I would use, you know, let's be sad, let's be angry, let's be happy. And with more advanced, I might say, let's be reluctant, frustrated. But yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. I like that idea.
Oh, cool. There's
Gabby is raising her hand.
yeah. Oh, missed that. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Gabby.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Walton.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Right. I have a question, but it may be a rather boring question, but I would really like you to comment on this. It's about planning. So when you actually when you do drama, when you use drama in the classroom, how do you go about planning a lesson? Do you first kind of decide what language you want to teach? So you first formulate your learning objectives, teaching objectives and learning outcomes, or do you, and then you look for a suitable dialogue or suitable materials, or do you just I don't know, find a nice dialogue and then you decide to do something with it, and accordingly you start working on the lesson plan, so the aims, the objectives, because obviously it's not just a dialogue that you use in the classroom, right? You need to have very clear objectives in your head as well. So how do you actually go about planning this? Because you can't find drama activities in course books. So that means that teachers have to prepare activities and lessons themselves. So what do you think? I mean, how do you do it? And perhaps Alice could comment as well, because she seems to have a lot of experience with drama techniques and using drama in the classroom. So yeah, that's my question.
So for me personally, because I teach mostly spoken language and I teach it for, you know, for older students. So I will start with the language function that I think my students need. And that might be something as broad as apologizing, or it might be something like, giving a presentation, and then I might break that down. So part of giving a presentation is sounding persuasive. So let's find a dialogue. So I choose the language function and the context first, and then I look for a dialogue that matches that, or I'll write one based on again, watching videos and listening to my students and listening to podcasts. But I know some teachers, if you're in a more traditional setting, you might be working with a reading, and then you can sort of you could dramatize the reading and talk about the emotions within the reading, and turn that into a little play. It's definitely something we do in literature too, right? How is this person feeling, and how did they express that feeling or hide that feeling, and what did they say instead? So that's also common.
Yeah, thank you, Walton. How about you, Chris? Sorry, I really now sound like someone who's questioning you, but it's very important for me. Okay, this process of planning, because it's easy to say use drama in the classroom, but how do we actually go about starting and planning, considering that it's not easily found in course books? So, Chris, how do you do it?
I look at the coursebook material, what they're going to be tested on further along the line, and I think about I use that as my starting point. If I have if in this section of the course, for example, they need to study something like modal verbs of obligation, then you identify a situation where rules are important. Talking about rules. I think I love sitcoms, programs like Seinfeld, for example, which is full of social rules, and things like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which are my absolute personal favorite. And these sitcoms are full of situations where you have lots of situations which correspond to what's being tested. So I basically look at a course book. I look at what students are being tested on, and I look at function. I look at the main grammar that's being used. And like Walton has mentioned, things like podcasts, things like reading TV script. I think we're all consumers of entertainment, aren't we? And it's easy to sort of to match certain language points with certain areas of grammar. Maybe I've been teaching for ages, so my grammar brain was never switched off completely. But yeah, so yeah, that's
yeah. Thank you. I have to say, I really like this idea of dramatizing something that you are planning to use with your students in the lesson. So if it's a reading or listening, whatever it is, or even grammar, then whatever you do in the lesson, then perhaps at the end of the lesson you could just dramatize this. So it's it's the element of drama added to the lesson, but not a full-blown drama lesson, let me put it like that. So I quite like this idea. I wonder if Alice would like to share, and perhaps Maria as well, because she uses a lot of drama. So I wonder how she goes about planning. Where do you start, Maria? Do you start with a text, or do you start with objectives and then you look for a text?
Well, what I do is according to, well, if you're following a textbook, so according to the textbook, or just like not basing everything on the textbook, but for example, the objective of the lesson, and I'll give you, for example, the indirect speech. So the students have to really master. I mean, we've done the basics. We've just learned the structures. We've got the vocabulary, and then they have to be able to use the indirect speech. So of course, I mean, I'm giving you the example of just reporting. So reporting in this case, then the news are, I think, is to me, has been always a very good framework. Because it's not personal, it's something to do with outside the classroom. Because if you say, right, you've got to report what's happening in the school, what's been going on in the school, what's happening next door. No. I just want to separate things from the physical context the students are in. And then I ask them, okay, just prepare some news, the sports you like, the football clubs you want to talk about, or an interview you've had with somebody who's famous, or just the fashion, the latest fashion, what the fashion designers say, politics, even if you want. And then, starting with this, that frame, okay, indirect speech. I want them to work on indirect speech, but then, I'm going to put that in a context. And then that way they can then expand and then create their own project. It's like a project in a way, I mean, they are working in a project. So
so you start with objectives, really. You decide what your students need, what you need to teach, and then you look for appropriate text materials and activities.
Well, I mean, I don't, sometimes I have to say that I tend to prepare my own materials when it comes to drama things. But of course, in that, I'm talking in about the context that the students have already the basics, the language, the structure, and then they are able to work on that. And then, of course, I supervise, and then the final, product comes out. And then, of course, then I mean, the main object would be, okay, we just now need to put into practice what we've learned, which is the indirect speech, and see how we get about that, and see if you have understood what you've done and you know how to do it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Maria. I can see YOUSUF has this urgent question. So back to you, Walton, okay? Because it's an interesting question. It's a big question. So Chris and Walton.
Yeah,
Can you
also,
see the question?
sorry?
Can you see YOUSUF's question in the chat box? How can we fit a bit of drama into very prescriptive or dry syllabuses? So it's a very, very good question, a big one. So as I said, back to you.
Okay, that was good. I missed those first. Yeah, and I was actually looking at that question as as you were talking. Yeah, so I think we've been talking about some of that just now. You can use a reading that's in the syllabus and just talk about dramatize it. Even if you don't create an actual script and a drama, you can talk about it as a drama. So it's called process drama. So you imagine, what would actors in this situation, people in this situation, do if it's a passage about the extinction of dinosaurs? Okay, well, how would the scientist going about this discovery talk? How would a scientist who had a different theory that has now been disproven, how would they react to this new news? If it's a text about a historical period, how do the people in that period feel? How do they talk to each other? I mean, you can turn a grammar exercise into a drama just by thinking about, okay, we just transformed these sentences from past simple to past perfect. Now let's talk about, why would someone say this? Why would someone say, oh yes, I had been to Brighton before today? Why would they say that? Who are they talking to? How are they going to say it? What's the response to it? What's the difference between, oh yes, I had been to Brighton before today, and yes, I had been to Brighton before today. One is very cheerful and friendly. The other one is like, are you an idiot? I'm from Brighton. I was born there. you can always inject it. Even very dry course book dialogues. I think it was straightforward. There was a dialogue about a business meeting, and it started, right, well, shall we get started? Thank you for coming in today. Those simple lines tell you a lot. They tell you that that person is the boss or in charge of the meeting. They tell you this meeting is happening at an unconventional time because she thanked them for coming in. You know, you can get a lot of small pragmatics and prosody cues out of the simplest things because we are using it constantly, whether we know it or not. We're constantly using these tools, so you can pull it out of anything.
I think utilizing tape scripts at the back of any book is often a gold mine for analyzing the language, for pragmatics, as Walton has mentioned, or the intonation, emotion with decontextualized sentences, exercises at the back of a book. So it often happens as a spur of the moment thing, if I'm honest, where you have a decontextualized sentence in the back of a book from a grammar exercise. How would you say this in an excited way, an angry way, a sad way? And as Walter mentioned before, it's a really empowering thing for students when you ask them, what would you do in this situation? How would you react? So a combination of second conditional questions, maximizing the amount that you can use things like tape scripts and exercises at the back of books. So things like this, I routinely make sure I have on my radar. If the material's really dry, if I feel that the students needs to be a bit more engaged. So things like this, really.